Hey, thanks everyone for joining our demo. We're gonna wait just a couple minutes to see if people will go ahead and join us and log in, and we get a few more viewers. Just like any other meeting, we know folks run a little bit late, so just give us a couple minutes, and we'll go ahead and get started with the demo of a couple of the new features we have. Um, and then we'll have a Q&A session after. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Wait a few minutes for people to join. And again, thank you for joining our live demo of upcoming Qube features for the Qube 6.7 release, which is scheduled for release on May 11th. We're going to, just one quick note before we get started and show you some features, is there's a little bit of a delay for people who are watching the broadcast and stream live on YouTube or through Google+. So if you have questions, just know that it takes roughly 15 to 20 seconds for us to see that, then we'll go ahead and answer them. So you can go ahead and submit questions through the Q&A, which should be available on the live stream. So we'll go ahead and get us started with one of the new features that Shinya, one of our developers, is going to demo, which is deferred table creation. Basically, when you submit a large amount of jobs, instead of creating or populating all the table information for that job right off the bat, the majority of the table creation gets deferred. You get a job ID right away. It just basically helps us to kind of speed up and smooth out the large batch scheduling. So I will go ahead and hand this over to Shinya.
Okay. Okay, so I hope you can hear me okay. Thanks again for joining us today. And like Scott mentioned, I'd like to show you a preview of a new performance enhancement feature that we're making to the supervisor. Specifically, we're talking about the speed up feature during job submissions, like Scott also mentioned. So if you have a lot of scripts or you have like a production system where you can submit a lot of jobs at once, it's going to help you speed things up. So I have a test script right here. Hope you can see the screen. Made the fonts pretty large, but so I have a test script called submit jobs.py. It's a Python script that will submit 1,000 jobs at once with 100 frames each on each individual job. So that's 100,000 frames that we're submitting here. So I'm first going to submit this job jobs with without using the new performance feature. It's going to be the conventional way, if you will, and I'm going to try to time it using the time command. So let's try this. So it's doing that right now. The jobs are being submitted right now, and I have my soup log open on this window on the right side, on the bottom, so we can see what's going on. But so conventionally, when submitting jobs, the system creates all the necessary MySQL database tables for each individual jobs being submitted, and on the fly, like immediately. So typically, there's 5 database tables created per job, and each of them are populated with initial data that can take a fair amount of time to actually complete. So if you pay attention to the soup log, it's actually doing that right now. It's printing out that the job is submitted for each individual job, and while it's doing that, it's creating the table and populating some data. So this is going to take, a minute and a half to actually complete. So bear with me, but note that I don't have my command prompt back yet. So the command is still running because it hasn't heard back from the supervisor that the job's been submitted. So it's going to continue. The prompt's going to continue being not returned until all of the jobs are submitted. Now everything's submitted. My script printed out all the job IDs. Now I have my prompt back. If you notice, it took 92 seconds, about a minute and a half, to submit the 1,000 jobs with 100 frames each. So, that's kind of slow. It's not bad. It's not super bad, actually, for submitting 1,000 jobs with 100 frames, but it should be better or nicer if the supervisor got back to you sooner, especially if you're working from like an interactive job submission system, like in a custom production system, for example. So I'm going to submit the same jobs, but with this new feature turned on. So I'm using the same script, and I'm going to use this new switch for the script that will actually turn on the new feature. I'm going to lock my worker so I don't. So the supervisor isn't impacted by the dispatching load. So oops. Okay, pardon me. So I'm going to submit the same jobs, 1,000 jobs with 100 frames each. And then use this new feature by passing this deferred table creation switch to the jobs to the commands option. Anyway, so here we go. So now that's going to be quite a bit faster. See, it's already done. It took about 4.5 seconds to submit the same number of jobs, 1,000 jobs, with 100 frames each. So if you look at the sweep logs, you don't see it doing much right now, but you see that it submitted 1,000 jobs, 999 jobs, and it says it's deferring table creation. So what's happening right now is actually the supervisor actually got back to us real quick with all those job IDs that it created, and then it didn't immediately create the database tables, but it's doing that in the background. So oops. So it's already actually created the tables and inserting the values right there. So you don't see it here. Maybe I can try to submit another 1,000 jobs to see to show you what it looks like, what your job looks like when it's still being created. So I just submitted another 1,000 jobs, and then if I do a Qube jobs, and I search for status right there. So I just submit the second set of 1,000 jobs, and as you can see, these new jobs are in the status, in this new status called registering, which is kind of different than pending. Pending means the job is ready to be run anytime now, but registering means that the jobs are being made into existence. So it's doing all the initializing, creating the tables, and things like that. So you'll see a brief moment of jobs being in that state. Now they're actually already created. So that's, so that was quite the speed up. If you noticed, 5 seconds, about 4.5 seconds against 90 seconds, a minute and a half to submit 1,000 jobs. So that, we think that's a pretty good improvement in response time. Just to show you what the script I used looked like. It's a Python script, so this is the entire script, which is pretty short. It's just setting up 1,000 jobs at 100 frames each and submitting it. And paying attention to these lines, this is the line that's actually used to submit the jobs using the qube.submit routine. If you notice, it's just pretty much identical between the two. One is the conventional way of submitting jobs, and this is the new way, not the new way, but it's still the same way, but it adds a new argument to the function call, which is deferred table creation equals true. So this single argument you pass to the API routine actually controls the behavior. If you pass this in as true, it's going to use the new feature, and you get the performance boost. So this makes it pretty trivial for you to modify any submission code that you may have in your production, custom production systems and stuff. And you should be able to take advantage of this fairly easily. So I guess that wraps up my part of the demo. If you do have questions, let us know. And I thank you for your attention. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Shinya. We're going to go ahead and hand it off to Brian now. And Brian's going to start off by playing a couple of videos that were made by John Burke for a couple of the features that he worked on. And then Brian will show some of the stuff that he's been working on after that. Go ahead, Brian.
All right, hello all. This is Brian Knudsen here. Before we start with John's demo, I'll just mention briefly that we have fully supported OS X 10.10 Yosemite, so we can run both the supervisor and the worker, and of course all the clients will run on 10.10 as well. I'm running 10.10 locally on my machine, and it's been running flawlessly without any issues. So that's a little bit of new news. Beyond that, we'll go ahead and go into our new feature on log size display. This is a pre-recorded message from Mr. Burke.
Hi, I'm going to demo a new feature in Qube 6.7, which will display the size of a job's logs in Wrangler view. It's a preference that's off by default. And if you have the log size column shown in the job list, the log data will be collected. Otherwise, it's not collected, so there's zero impact on this new feature. So right now, you can see I've got 7.3 meg. And if I do a refresh, I'll get all the data, I'll get all the log sizes. There we go. So I can see these are about 800 meg. So these are small. The other feature is that there's another preference to limit the amount of data pulled down. I can say right now, limit the log data per job instance. They only get it at 1 meg. What will happen is when the data for a particular job exceeds a certain size, like 1 megabyte, it trims out the middle part and leaves a head and tail, the total that size. So I can see here about 16,000 and change lines. I look about 8,400. I should see the message that there it is. It says it's been snipped out, but generally on logs this big, you don't really need the middle anyways. You're only interested in the head or the tail. And for logs that are enormous, like a couple hundred megabytes, it's generally an error that's spewing out, and really you only need to look at the tail. So this will greatly speed up the fetching of the log data and help with Qube performance.
Okay, and then we'll move on to V-Ray distributed bucket rendering and how we collect hosts kind of a different way now.
Hi, I'm going to demo the new functionality of the V-Ray DBR rendering in the 3ds Max job type. This will allow the render job to start when the first instance become available, and other workers can join in once they become available. You don't have to wait for all the machines to start up first and then lock 2 machines first. I'll submit the job. It picks up on my local machine first, or the first worker that's available rather. And if I look in the logs, I will find that, come on. It'll consider all the machines in the groups that I specified to be the slaves, and then I'm going to unlock the other ones after the fact. And now if I look at my job, I should have all 3 running. And this one is running, they're all started essentially on a custom port so that you don't get any conflicts with the multiple V-Ray DBR render clusters running on the render farm itself. So this one. So here's a slave, here's another slave, there's my render running. Here's the port number that I picked this time, 3780. This one's also running on that same port. That one's running on this port. If I look at an older job, I can see that it was actually running on a different number port. And it looks like the render's complete. I was waiting for the first instance, the master, to shut down. There's the first instance of the master is shut down, and within about 30 seconds, the other slaves should detect the master has shut itself down, and they'll shut down as well. There goes the first one. And there's that, and the job's complete.
Okay. Now we'll move on to a couple new features in Artist View. The first thing is something that you already saw in Wrangler View. We've just moved it over to Artist View as well, trying to improve the functionality of Artist View and kind of mirror what Wrangler View can do. We're in the starting stages of that anyway. So the big thing here is a new feature about modifying an environment variable after it's been submitted. So I have a few jobs here that have been submitted with an environment. If I just go to the Modify, there's a new section here on close. There we go. On job environment variables, it shows me which environment variables are available in this particular job. If I wanted to change any of them, I can click Edit, and I get a sub-dialog. Allows me to change them. I can add a new environment variable if I so choose. List. And of course I can delete any would like to do that. Just the same as it is in Wrangler View, just the new thing that's in here for 6.7. Moving on beyond that, the next thing that we need here is that we're working with here is the new submission system. So I will bring up a submission dialog so we can look at it. Remember, like before, like last time, if you were with us last time anyway, the new submission system is a is a replacement for the existing submission system. It's being built directly into Artist View and it's designed to be a lot more flexible than our last system. This dialog that you're seeing here hasn't had any attention paid to look and feel. It's purely functional, so some things may not line up exactly correctly, and certainly the colors aren't right, but you'll get the idea of what's going on. As a bit of review from last week, any line here, any row is called a parameter. So a parameter typically has a label, like job name, and then some sort of field. There might be one or more field. The field is where you enter in data, whether it's a string or an integer or a combo box or a checkbox like a bool. All these parameters can be defined as not belonging to a tab, in which they'll show up here at the top, or they can be in a tab, which will show up in the bottom. Inside of a tab, tabs can have subtabs. If you have a subtab, then that's just, again, a tab listed within another tab. What's changed between the last time that we talked about this and today is that the definition is a little bit different in the submission dialog. It's a little code heavy, so I don't want to get into the details of it too deeply, but I'll just show you that in general what we're talking about here is that now we're defining a submission dialog. If you're writing your own custom submission dialog, we're defining it as a simple dictionary in a Python script. That dictionary is keyed on the internal name of the submission dialog, and then may define some parameters of the dialog that actually derive what's in this submission UI. The most important of those parameters is the one that's called parameters, as it says here. And parameters is just an ordered dictionary of other parameters. Each parameter is, much like the submission dialog itself, keyed on the internal name, and the value of the parameter is the description of all the things in the parameter. The most important thing in the description of the parameter is the fields. The fields defines each one of the actual data entry points in the parameter. Again, they are keyed on the internal name, and then the value of each one of those parameters, or each one of the fields, is the definition of the field itself. So that's a bit of review from last time. What's new this time is that now there is a central preferences system. And we tried to move forward with our central preferences that already exist in Wrangler View. As a bit of a recap there, in Wrangler View, if you want central preferences, you set up a submission dialog or set up your preferences the way that you choose. Then you say save some sort of an external preferences file. You make that external preferences file visible to the file system, visible to all other instances of Wrangler View, and then you tell those instances of Wrangler View where that file is. They then read that file when they start up, and they have the preferences. That way you can have the same preferences across your entire facility. With the new submission system, we wanted to make that process a little more streamlined and a little easier. So the central preferences system now actually lives on or near the supervisor. It's automatically discovered, and it's database driven. So the preferences submission UI itself will ask the central preferences system, without any sort of configuration, will ask the central preferences system, what are the preferences for this particular submission dialog? So we've saved a step where you don't have to have each one of your UIs, each one of your artist views or Wrangler views, define a path to preferences. Instead, they're automatically discovered and they're applied. The preferences themselves are a little bit, not a little bit, they're quite a bit more extensive than the previous system. So the previous system was one set of preferences. Whereas now we're moving forward, we allow you to define multiple sets of preferences in what we're calling multiple preference tiers. So at the bottom tier, we have something called factory defaults, and then the next tier above that, we have something called studio common, and then above that, studio specific, preset specific, and then user specific. Each one of those are defined as such. The factory defaults are the things that we will give you. Studio common are things that are parameters that will exist in all submission UIs. So for example, priority. So if I'm supporting, let's say, 15 or 20 different applications in my studio, I don't want to necessarily have to set priority for 15 or 20 different submission UIs. Instead, I can say I want the priority for every one of my submission UIs to be, let's say, 100. When I set my preference, I would set it at the studio common, and then every one of those every submission UI will then have that preference of 100 or whatever it happens to be. The next level above that is studio specific, so that would be specific to a submission UI, so specific to Nuke, for example, or specific to Houdini, or specific to Maya. We'll set a preference for that one thing, and that will apply to all submission UIs for that particular type of job across the entire studio. Next one above that is preset specific, and that's something new that we heard from our customers, requests from our customers. They said they would like to have different presets based on different roles. So maybe I'm a wrangler, so I should have a different set of submission presets than an artist. Or maybe I'm working on transformers, and I should have a different set of submission presets than the other team that's working on a commercial that has a different set of deadlines and a different set of priorities. So this preset specific thing allows you to set presets based on some conditions. So I, as a user, can have several different sets of presets depending on what I'm using, depending on what I'm doing. And then, of course, beyond that is the user presets, which allows any user to set their own presets. So if they want to set something that's specific to them, they can. Now, because there are so many different levels, it might seem like there would be no way, or it might be very difficult to rein in what people are setting. So what we've done is created something called a mandate. So at each preference tier, you can say set this preference or set this particular value to be a mandate. If it's set as a mandate, then any tiers above that are ignored, and if it's a mandate, the users can't change it. So if we look in this submission UI, we have a few things that are set as mandates. You'll notice that this thing called farm concurrency, two fields, instances and max instances. Instances we can change, but max we can't, because max has been set in the preferences as a mandate. And in fact, if I mouse over it, we'll see that this value has been mandated at the studio common level. So at least we know where it's been set. Now, all that requires some sort of a way to, of course, set all this. This is still in development, so we can't do a full-on demo, but you can see exactly how you would do it anyway. If I am a Qube admin, and that means if I have Qube administrative permissions, I can go to File. I'll have this File menu displayed, by the way. If I have an admin permissions, I'll have the File menu displayed. If I don't, this isn't even here. But I can say Enable Editing. That shows me, it changes the dialog a little bit here. I can change now anything, the dialog label itself, what we see up here. I can view my my particular tier. So if I wanted to see how this particular dialog would look like at the studio common level versus the studio specific level versus the preset specific, etc., I can do that here. Or I can show the aggregate, which is kind of the assembly of all of the things. The aggregate, by the way, is what your artists will see. Anyway, when I'm in the editing mode now, you'll notice each one of these parameters, again, every row is a parameter, each parameter has an edit button. If I click edit, I'll get a sub-dialog here that allows me to change any one of the fields in this particular parameter. So I could change what it's called from priority to something else. This is Unicode, so if you'd like to do it in a different language, that works just as well. If I set it as required, then it is labeled red, and it needs to be a value needs to be there in order for the submission to be validated. I can move any parameter to any other tab. I can move any parameter to a tab within a tab if I define both the tab and the parent tab. This holds true for other parameters too. So, for example, if I wanted to change the frame numbers option in the preview frames, if I didn't want it to be in the preview frames tab, this, by the way, is a factory default thing. You still have the ability to change it by simply removing the tab specification, and then it would show up here at the top. Or likewise, if I'm thinking this application specific tab and I wanted to move it somewhere else, maybe to the top or maybe to a tab called Advanced. And by the way, you're not locked to this list of tabs. You can create your own tabs simply by defining them. But in any event, when I edit one of these parameters, I have the ability to change the parameter itself and then each one of the fields. And you'll see here too where we have the mandate option. If I have a parameter that has multiple fields, we just get a list of them. We can mandate fields individually. So this parameter, for example, like we showed you earlier, it's a single parameter, but one of the fields is mandated and the other is not mandated. Now, I mentioned that this is still in development, so we haven't put in the place where you'll actually set it at the particular tier, but the same thing will hold true, that you'll have a pull-down menu here, and you'll say for tier common, set this value and this value and that value. For tier preset specific, where the preset equals transformers, set the values this, this, and that. And again, all this stuff is auto-discovered because we're saving it centrally in the central database, in the a preferences database. So there's no setup or anything that's necessary. It all just kind of works right out of the box. And that about covers where we are currently with the submission system. And this is an ever-improving, ever-evolving system. So if you have any suggestions or feedback, please let us know. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass back to Scott.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Sorry, just had to unmute myself there. So that's everything that we're going to cover today in terms of demo material. So we'd like to go ahead and open it up for questions. And to remind you how the broadcast works with Google On Air Hangouts, there's a bit of a delay. So we'll go ahead and kind of leave a little bit of lingering time for questions, and as they kind of make their way in, we'll go ahead and address them. So you can go ahead and use the Q&A option that you have with the stream. And as we wait just a little bit longer for questions, probably not much more, just wanted to recap what we went over so far today. First, Shinya started by showing us the deferred table creation, which is helpful when you're submitting a large number of jobs. As you could see, he scheduled 1,000 jobs with, I believe it was 100 frames per job, and it finished in a few seconds. So we're definitely hoping that helps for our larger studio clients. We also had a video done by John Burke that showed the max VBR jobs and how you can go ahead and kick off a job and then add resources or workers to those jobs as they become available. So like when your people go home for the night, their machines get added to the jobs if there's extra capacity or additional capacity. John also did a video that Brian showed for viewing the log size in the UI and being able to adjust some of the parameters for that so you can cap the size of it. And then Brian went ahead and showed us the UI for altering the job environment after a job's been submitted. And he showed us the submission UI, how you can configure the submission options, and a preview into the admin controls. So we'll wait just a few more seconds, and I think we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Okay, we have a question that came in. It was asking about being able to view the demo later online. And absolutely, you'll be able to go ahead and view this online. The video actually automatically gets uploaded to our YouTube channel. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and mail everybody after the demo, the folks that we invited, the link to that so you can go ahead and view it. But knowing that your bandwidth was bad, and I know that occasionally that happens with Google Hangouts, you should be able to watch it later. And if there are any issues with quality or clarity or whatever, please go ahead and let us know. Feel free to send us a question, and we can go ahead and follow up with you to recap any of the features, to cover anything that you may have missed. Okay, well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Go ahead and conclude the broadcast. Like I said, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and send me an email at scott@pipelinefx.com, or you can send our support alias an email, support@pipelinefx.com, and we'll be sure to follow up with you to answer any questions. If you want to attend the next demo live, or anything, we do plan to do 2 more client demos for our next release, which should be Qube 6.8.0, which should be out 10 weeks after the 6.7 release on May 11th. So our current target date for 6.8 would be July 20th. Thanks again for attending the demo, and we hope to talk to you soon.